So this week's video, hopefully if all goes as planned, I got better audio and it will actually record this time. I tried recording earlier this week, giving a kind of opinion piece on a rather influential figure in my history, one that to this day still has varied impacts through their behavior. Heck, I even supplemented some of that with actual conversation to the person in question. But that fortunately didn't actually process properly. My previous recording method didn't work as intended. So that kind of put us in a weird spot. But I got back from watching Sonic 3, and I'm like, hey, why not make that about my third one? Which is, I want to make clear. We have devolved so much in our mainstream media that having a movie that has so much of it dedicated to genuine fan service, and rushing through some of the more elaborate narration for the sake of I want to call it pop culture ease, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. But it was still the parts that weren't just fan service or repeating of story that many already know, kind of was still good. It was still very well told, and that gets me about the Sonic series. I was expecting Sonic to himself kind of settle a little bit more, and he is. I was expecting Knuckles to become less of what he was in Sonic 2 and more of what I would expect once he's gotten cozy, but I imagine I'm probably being too ambitious. It's probably still too early in his story arc. But even the character conflicts were actually kind of acceptably well done, which is a rare thing these days. Some of the early portions of the movie, I was like, I've been, just for the sake of experimentation, interacting with like character.ai and things of the sort. I'm like, some of these are the kind of writing you would see from an AI. I'm starting to see it as it happens. But it's for the sake of like speeding through the initial setup. And I don't know if I'm mad about that, because I was annoyed at the beginning of the film. I'm like, that you are speeding through like a half hour, maybe an hour's worth of content in the first portion of this film, and just boiling it down so you can use it later. And I recognize at the instant it happened. I'm like, you are speed running, setting up these plot points. You know what you need for later in the story, and you've decided that this is what you're going to do. And I'm like, it's fair. It's fair. You already... It's like when the MCU slash Spony... The MCU slash Sony Spider-Man speed run the Uncle Ben death. They just kind of did it off screen. We all know, with power comes great responsibility, that kind of thing. We already had that with Toby. We already had that with Andrew. I don't even think Andrew really fully explored that. I think even that was trying to, like, how much of the Spider-Man storyline can we streamline? And they kind of did the same thing with Shadow, except they did something I wasn't expecting. They speed ran his origin, but then used the fact that they had speed run his origin to reverse engineer a mystery, to kind of explore his full motivations as it unfolds, which kind of fits with the theming of with Sonic Adventure 2, which is where it's not just where he premiered, but it's not where he kind of got his start, like I was about to say. That is where he premiered, but it's not really where his story took off. But it's what we know him most for, is Sonic Adventure 2. And to say that Sonic 3 is a retread of Sonic Adventure 2 would be very reductive. In fact, I would say the movie version of Gerald is a very interesting reinterpretation. I had always been under the impression when I was giving it my full attention, that Gerald in the original Sonic Adventure 2 had worked on the Eclipse canon with the goal of revenge, but had, before the end of his life, kind of had a measure of remorse over such a project. He didn't want the world to end. But seeing that expectation played off perfectly, but telegraphed perfectly, was kind of fun. Because, yeah, they were a bit heavy-handed here and there, but it's only heavy-handed if you actually know what he's after. If you don't, it just seems like a curse your inevitable betrayal kind of moment. But there's a moment in there where it seems like Gerald didn't actually intend to betray Ivo. That wasn't his goal and intention. It was just an inevitable side effect. And that's an interesting approach. Because based on how the Sonic movies have presented him, there's actually every reason why Gerald would believe Ivo might have been on board. And you know what? I think Jim Carrey played both those characters really dang well. Like, I don't remember which movie it was that made me second guess Jim Carrey's ability to act, but this series has single-handedly reaffirmed to me that I was right to have faith in Jim Carrey's acting. So I'm going to do what I personally call the Captain Marvel effect. And dear Lord, the amount of people I'm sure are already upset hearing that movie get mentioned in context of Sonic 3. But it's I think this movie is decent and acceptable, and while it makes some mistakes here and there, it's just good. It is a good popcorn flick. It is a solid film in its own right. But it's not worth the hype it's getting. That's why I opened with these, like, is this what we've been reduced to? Where a basically decent video game movie is to be celebrated? Like, I don't hate it. It's a good film. I almost cried at some parts of it, but almost crying is itself not a, 10 out of 10 perfect film. I am not so easily won over. You can almost make me cry and have some genuinely great points and some really well-told story parts and still not be a 10. Because the other aspects of what you did was, and you know it, I don't care. If you worked on that movie, you know what you did. You, probably by editorial, were told that you needed to make the movie shorter. So you went, let's just cut out the parts that aren't entirely necessary. And you succeeded. You succeeded at cutting out the parts that were not entirely necessary, but were entirely noticeable to somebody like me. And the Chow Garden. As somebody who was never in my entire life won over to the Chow Garden at all, let me say that was an interesting approach. But yes, I enjoyed this film. I would have no issues with showing it to any member of my family and saying that I enjoy it. I don't think it was a masterpiece. I don't think it was worth writing home over. But the fact that it is decent means we need to encourage Hollywood to chase it. And I was the first to go, you have Keanu Reeves playing technically one of the most popular characters in Sonic. I don't care your opinion on them. It's really true. Shadow found a way to take Edgelord and make it so sincere and genuine that it just became lovable through him. But Shadow is one of the most beloved characters. And you assigned a guy who's so past his era as an actor. And I love Keanu Reeves. I don't want to downplay that. Keanu Reeves is an excellent actor. He is the Sean Connery of our time, and I'm sure that Keanu himself would take that as a compliment. He's aging gracefully. He's still skilled at what he does, and he'll keep doing it until he can't anymore. That's a real compliment in the acting field. That said, I don't know how I feel about having somebody so old assigned to Shadow, a character that's going to keep showing up and is technically 16 years old. But I stand by it as wise, because by the 50-year-old standard, that means that Shadow in the movie universe was born in 1974. Or at least that's when he was sealed away. And Keanu Reeves is the correct age to be able to properly understand how somebody from the 70s would interpret our modern day. So even though he's a little old, his interpretation will be on point. And so I'm torn. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, literally not 2 minutes ago. He is the Sean Connery of our time. And when he stops aging gracefully, he can pull the Jackie Chan and just go straight to voice acting. Because I don't imagine he lives a life that would affect his voice too much. He understands, as a creator, that his voice is a part of what he gets cast for, whether he's John Wick or anything else. And while he was younger, that was typecasting that was bad. Now that he's older, it's similar to Liam Neeson. You hire Liam Neeson and Patrick Stewart for the voice they bring. Because even though they've aged, they bring a certain je ne sais quoi, to steal from the French. Because yes, I speak French. They bring a certain je ne sais quoi to every part that they personally are handpicked for. And I think there's merit to that. So Keanu Reeves, wonderful casting. I'm glad I trusted these directors with casting him as Shadow. It was hit and miss as far as whether or not he felt like Shadow. But the fact that, for the most part, I wasn't thinking about it is proof enough that he was a perfect casting. Again, I think the problem with Knuckles is not Idris Elba. Idris Elba is doing a great job. It's the writing for Knuckles. They have him still too tribal. And I get why. Because he's Knuckles. He is the last of the Echidna, and that's kind of one of the most important aspects of it. I just thought he would have modernized more. But that's a me problem. That's a me problem. So it wasn't distracting. There was no aspect of Knuckles' discussion or acting that was distracting from the point. And Tails was, as Tails you're going to be, actually. I am looking forward to as they move forward, because it seems like they're not trying to do a Chris Thorndike. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by they're not trying to do a Chris Thorndike? Well, Chris Thorndike was somehow still plot relevant after we were shooting lasers at dinosaurs in space. And I don't think that's going to happen if things continue to go off the rails with the humans. I think they're trying to have Sonic age up so they can eventually phase out the family he was in. But they're having this... I think if I were to pull a trope, it would be the Happy Hogan. His human family is never going to be not relevant. But I think they're going to become less prevalent as the series goes on. And that's normal. That's as it should be. Because as much as they, as characters, have every reason in universe to be invested, to be involved, to have communications, narratively they aren't important. You can give them things to do narratively, but they're not actually significant to the plot. And I think that's what gets me about it. Is this idea of they fill a necessary role right now, but as Sonic gets older, phasing them out is not going to be so hard. And once you fully phase them out, they can still have cameos. They can still play a supporting role. If there's an actual thing in the plot that they'd be perfect to solve, you can still bring them in. But Sonic will eventually move on. Once he's eventually moved on, you can focus on Sonic, the character, the plots, everything. As it currently stands, I will not. This is where we enter proper spoilers, not offhand spoilers, not like. Because I tried my best to avoid anything that was directly a spoiler. Um, so you can leave if you want to avoid direct spoilers. But there are two after credit scenes. The first has me asking questions because we have two potential sources of inspiration they could be pulling from for the Sonic series in particular. And for all I know, they're shuffling the deck. They're shuffling two decks together and going, all right, we're going to make a story out of these two things, maybe more, mix it together. They've been well enough written so far, I'm not concerned about it. But the second one was just for the sake of everybody who doesn't understand Sonic games. Because it showed that Shadow was still alive after the story, which, I mean, if you've played a Sonic game, you know. And if you know marketing, you know. Because Shadow is one of the single most marketable characters in all of Sonic. So what you have here is you have confirmation of what everybody already knew, but it's always nice to know. And it seems less ambiguous than the series itself, which in today's modern fiction has me concerned. But the Sonic series has been so good about doing right by the story that I'm going to give them a pass. I'm going to give them a pass as just... I'm going to give them a pass as people who just outlined for those who don't know that he is in fact still alive, to let the children know, hey, you're going to see Shadow again. Now, the first post-credit scene, I have a favorite Sonic character. Now, it took me years to figure out why. Because whenever anybody complained about her, I'd go, yeah, but I still like her. And I was trying to figure out why. Why do I like this particular Sonic character? It was only somewhat recently I pieced together. It's because she was originally voiced by Lisa Ortiz. Now, people who don't know, don't know. And people who do know, or think they know, will pull from some of her other roles. If by some chance this makes its way to you, Lisa, I want to make this 100% clear to you. Your voice is and will always be Lena Inverse to me. And Lena Inverse is by far one of my favorite fictional characters. Because she's not just morally gray. She is the most humanized anime character I've ever seen in my frickin' life. Is she a good person? No, but she's very human. She has a vast wealth of power. She's clever and smart enough to do things nobody else in her field does. But also, by virtue of that, realizes she has a lot of leverage because of that. She does things nobody else does, and nobody else can match her. And so what she's looking for is the same thing all of us would be looking for if we were top of our field. Recognition, fame, money, food. Luxury. Luxury. When you're at the top of your field, nobody can match you. What do you seek? You seek luxury. And my God, does Lena balance that fine line between morality and luxury. She lives like she's got nothing to her name because she keeps blowing everything up. But she will do the right thing, even if she really wishes it didn't have to be her to do it. There is no line that's more relatable to people at large than the I am highly capable, but my services cost something, and I will save the world, but I'd prefer it was anybody but me. And it's so beautiful. She is in like my top 3, if not top 5. I don't know, but definitely top 3 of any fiction, anywhere, at any time. So the fact that Lisa Ortiz voiced Lena Inverse means whenever I hear Lisa Ortiz voice anything, it takes a bit for me to convince myself that it wasn't like that. That's not a good character. At least passable. At least acceptable. Lisa Ortiz's acting is acceptable to me. Even as time goes on, it's fine. And that's like, even if they don't get Lisa Ortiz to voice Amy Rose, again, I warned you about spoilers, but even if they don't get Lisa Ortiz to voice her, the character of Amy Rose benefits from the fact that my first exposure to her was Lisa Ortiz. Which means every single version, whether it be Sonic Boom or Rusty Rose or any of that, they all benefit from that benefit of the doubt that I go, but she was voiced by Lena Inverse. And therefore, whatever she does, I'm going to be a lot more patient and a lot more entertained by virtue of association. Is that fair? No. Is it right? Probably not. Will it stop me? No. Because that's what it means to be a fan. Anyway, that's your video for the week. Thought I'd share that with you instead of the hot mess that was just not coming out correctly. For all I know, everything I was going to say is going to come out next video anyway. So don't worry about that. You're probably going to get all the same content of the ruined video earlier this week. And just have a nice year. Wish you the best and have a good time.